When I was around 6 or 7 years old, I went to a pool party with my biracial cousin, and I was the only black person at the whole party. I was just swimming along, and I saw a little girl kind of looking at me funny, and I didn't realize that I was swimming close to her, getting close to her. But by the time I did, she freaked out and started crying hysterically because she was afraid of me. And that was the first time I realized that I was different and that there was something wrong with the way that I looked and that it wasn't a positive thing. So I grew up in a really backward small town where that was the norm. White kids could do a lot of things that we would only dream of doing and getting away with, and we were just supposed to be okay with that. So growing up in a town like that, being a black girl, I hated myself in different ways that I think other girls did. It wasn't just about acne or my nose or anything different about the way I looked. It was the fact that I hated my hair and its texture because I had to wear a swimming cap every time we went to the swimming pool, or I hated the fact that my nose was so big and black and my lips were so full. I hated the color of my skin. I hated that I was so black and so dark, and that every summer I knew I was just going to get even darker. And when people talked about beautiful girls, that wasn't the look. It wasn't the dark-skinned girl on TV that was beautiful. It was the lighter-skinned girl, or in magazines, I wasn't what people thought was pretty. So I grew up around a lot of white people that really did love me and care about me. And I asked one of my friends one day who had a son if, when his son gets older, would you allow him to date a black girl? And he paused and said, well, of course, if she's like you. So I knew that meant if she was stereotypically black, it would never happen. And I realized at that point that I had, since being the little girl in the swimming pool, I changed the way I spoke and the way I carried myself. And I made sure that when white people around me thought about black people, they didn't think about me. So I didn't have to deal with the blatant racist things that all the other black girls or black guys around me had to deal with, because I was the Oreo. I was the girl that could just kick it with any type of people. I could just fit in with the white people. I was never white enough for them, but I could blend in enough, and I could put on my white girl voice and get things done and be successful without having to deal with the blatant racist things that were coming out of people's mouth.
So in college, I was invited to a park. Their friend was having their music debut, and I got there and I didn't know anybody. I was the only African American in the park, and it was a lot of people in the park, and it made me nervous being the only African American, but also excited to hang out with new people. I got there, saw my friend. I brought a friend with me, and we were hanging out at this table. And while we were there, it was a bunch of us. It was probably like 8 or 9 of us. While we were there, a random guy comes out of nowhere, approaches the table, kind of looks around, takes a lap around the table, looks at me, locks eyes with me, and approaches me and asks me, why do you have an attitude? And I was kind of thrown off by that, but I looked at him and I said, sir, I don't understand. I don't have an attitude. And he said, well, your arms are crossed, so there must be an issue. And I was like, sir, I don't have an issue, and I'm trying to keep calm, so leave me alone. And he eventually walked off, and at that point I got super uncomfortable, more uncomfortable than I already was, and the people that I was around weren't really welcoming. So I looked at my friend and I was like, I think I'm ready to go. We left, and I called my sister and was kind of talking through what had just happened, and my friend that I brought with me was like, I think you should calm down. I think you're doing too much. It's not that big of a deal. And ever since that moment, and even in that moment, I don't know what made me more irritated, the fact that I was singled out in a crowd of people for looking like I had an attitude, or the fact that my 2 friends there did not stick up for me, the people that I consider to be super close with. And ever since that moment, I've found myself like subconsciously evaluating the friendships that I allow in my space. And that's a big deal for me. I care a lot about my friends, and there will never be a time where I just let them hang in a situation like that where they're uncomfortable, and I don't ever want that to happen to me.
Picture this. May 2016, Anderson University classroom. A young black man, myself, is talking about Black Lives Matter. And in the middle of my amazing presentation, a girl interrupts me and says, "Wait, my uncle's a cop." But black people had slaves too. Me, anger starting to fill up in my body, was saved by an amazing professor who interrupted us and fixed the situation. But besides that, there's a university that doesn't really care about how I feel in any type of way, or my brothers or sisters, or any minority at that point. Now, fast forward to September. A young black man working at Chick-fil-A 3 weeks in. A pastor comes to me and asks me, "Hey son, have you ever picked cotton before?" Me, wanting to retaliate because I was so filled with anger, doesn't, because I know in my heart that I would be the one that got in the most trouble, that was looked upon as dangerous, and just lost my job. But the thing about it is that though I would have been looked at as evil, there were evil words that were spoken to me by a pastor at a Christian company. Those same words that were evil that was spoke to me at a Christian university, which doesn't make sense because what they have said contradicted all of what Jesus spoke about and what Scripture says. That made me feel terrible, because besides black women having one of the hardest jobs throughout history, losing their husband as a slave and having to take care of their kids by themselves, black men, black Christian men, have had the hardest job ever because they are looked upon as inhumane, looked upon as dangerous, suspicious, evil, not like others, unworthy. There's no hope. And that just makes me feel terrible, because me, wanting to get ahead in life, I realize that I have to work that much harder in order for me to be successful. And that's how I feel.
This is my story, and it matters.
This is my story, and it matters.
This is my story, and it matters.
One day, when the glory comes, it'll be ours. It'll be ours.
Oh, one day, when the war is won, it'll be sure. It'll be sure.